Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Midday Musings. For those of you who can see my bedroom and hear my voice, please just drop something in the chat to say that you can see and hear us. There's a fair few people live. Can you hear us? Anyone?
Oh,
TikTok. Hello. They must be able to hear us. Come on, say hello.
Now, are they?
24 people. Put something into the chat. Come on, say hello.
No.
But you can hear me, can't you?
I can hear you, yeah.
I'm going to assume that people can hear us, and
are we still just
they're not being shy. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask on the Lonely Marketers
the
WhatsApp group, can you hear us? There you go, Billy Humphreys. Everyone can hear you. Thanks, Billy and Amelia, for not listening to my request and putting it in the chat and doing it in the WhatsApp.
Thanks.
But thanks anyway. So today's episode is all about ROI. I'm delighted to be joined by Janine Owen. She's very, very experienced, wealth of background in various recruitment companies. I'll let her introduce herself. Just before we do that, though, general housekeeping. Those of you who want to chat, please do. If you've got a question to ask, there you go. Put it in the ask a question spot at the bottom, and we'll pick those up. I'll try and keep up with the chat stream if it goes crazy, if there's questions in there as well. There's a call to action there for next Tuesday's Midday Musings, which is with Harriet Rhodes, all about navigating your way around Google Analytics. But anything else, I hope you enjoy. And let's go, Janine. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Janine Owen. I've been a recruitment marketer pretty much my whole working career. I started at Reed. I started at Reed.co.uk actually when it was nothing like the behemoth it is now. Moved over to Reed's offline business. Then moved into Hayes for the inverted commas big job, which I didn't enjoy, big corporate. And then jumped ship 10 years ago, almost exactly, to Search Consultancy. Did 10 years there as marketing director, built their marketing function, and have just, I think, officially finished there next week. So this is my first, as of the 1st of June, it will be my first time in my life that I'm not officially a recruitment marketer by trade and being paid to be so.
Excellent. Well, it seems like the chat is working, but I definitely can't see it. So I'm not sure what happened there. So please make sure any questions that come up, you put them in the ask a question, because then I'll definitely see it. So obviously Crowdcaster's got some glitches. There's also a poll that you might see that's around marketing budgets that I'm just interested to get people's views on as well. So please look at that. So let's crack on. What is ROI? Return on investment. Is there a definition?
I don't have an off-pat one. I didn't look one up, but for me, it's about the value you add. Clearly, it's about a number.
Yep.
You know, return on investment for most operational people, it's a number. And I think that's the challenge, because I think for most marketers, you can give a number. What works for job boards? You know, what does total jobs return year on year?
Yep.
What did that campaign deliver? That. But I think for a director, particularly a marketing director or a head of marketing that runs a team, it's about value of that team, and it's about return for the investment of the time, the effort. It's not just pounds spent, and I think that's where the story element, and that's where the skill of it comes in, right? That's where proving the value that marketing can add comes in. The number piece is hugely important. You know, the number of applicants generated, the number of leads that you generate. And what does that equate to in real terms? That's the bit that operations really hear, I think.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bigger story to be sold as well.
Yeah, and there's a skill in telling that story to the right way to your stakeholders, isn't it? I think if initially we focus on the number piece, because I think that's what you know, people are going to get probably the quick wins from when they can demonstrate the profit. I think from my side, using my experience out the years, I usually say a kind of a good return on investment, if you're able to do it, is anything 10 times what you're spending. That's good. I'd probably say at the moment you'd be probably happy with 3-4 times. if just breaking even, to be honest. But are you kind of in that same ballpark figure?
Yeah, so I've worked for the last 10 years on a slightly higher number. So we work on 10 to 14 pounds being an amber flag, so something to work on and to push and to, it's working, but it's not quite
acceptable
momentum. Yeah. And then for 14 pounds plus being green, being, being totally right. Okay, this is working. We're getting it right. And also looking to break it down, I guess, at a reasonably granular level. So which teams are generating £14 off that campaign? Which teams are only generating 11? Which teams are generating 26 and why? And trying to work out some of those things, because search is a multi-specialist business. I think if you're niche, your campaigns are a bit simpler to judge return on, but clearly in a multi-specialist, different things are working for different people.
Yeah. And I think if we go back to Tuesday's episode with Richard in terms of getting to know the consultants, is that digging into individuals or at a team level, regardless of niche or multidiscipline, I think trying to understand why something's working and not working is important, especially if it's something generalist, an event, or a wider range of event, or a piece of technology or a tool that you're using.
Something like that. It is really important, and I think that helps the consultants understand as well from their side, because working out return, we're coming onto that, and tracking it can be a really manual job, because depending on your system, what the consultants deem as returning can be very different to what marketing see as returning. So I think the more you work closely with your consultants to prove the point of what you can deliver if you're returning it well, the better they understand it and the more importance they deem to recording it correctly.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm just interested. I just want to take a quick look at the poll. No one's contributed to the poll yet, but it's very hard to judge a return on investment if you haven't got a budget in the first place, isn't it, as well? I think
you're still spending, aren't you? You're even if you're doing something, a content piece that you're writing, that you're not spending any money on, that you're distributing, your time is worth money. So you still need to judge. That's something
very important. Just picking up on that as well, isn't it? Is your individual time. You have to take that into account, not just the tool or the spend you've spent on Google or anything.
Design time, if you've done it, if you've designed it up, or if you've done a white paper out of it, if you've infographic, all of those things, they count. So I think even if you're just doing what equates to, what you think of as free, or what, your ops person would say is, that's just free. It isn't necessarily. And it is about making sure that even that, you're generating something back from it. So even if you haven't got a budget, or you've never been given a budget, you can still track return. Yeah.
And I've just been asked a question there saying that the polls are working as well. So Crowdcast has got some proper gremlins for the presenters at the moment. So should marketers be the ones kind of drive? If they, I want to touch on budgets, because I think it's important, and I appreciate that you can still track spend regardless. But should recruitment companies have a specific marketing budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
so why do some not? Because some don't.
No, some don't. And sometimes it's size and scale, I think. Sometimes it's just because they've grown organically and they haven't needed to allocate a budget. Usually, though, if you dig a little bit, there is spend that you would associate with a marketing budget.
Yeah.
That's what I find. So it's about pulling it into one space. And I think there's that age-old debate, and I can't remember, somebody's posted it recently, but around job boards, should they be ops owned, should they be marketing owned?
I've got it on the pad. Job boards.
So there will be spend in there in any recruitment company's business that you could classify as marketing, and it's about how what are the end objectives of that. And I spent a lot of time training my team to ask, well, but why are you trying to do that? What are you trying to achieve? And is that the best way to do that with whatever you're thinking is the opportunity there?
Okay. So, and someone's kindly sent me the poll results. So it's split actually 50-50 from people who've answered, saying people who have
they don't.
Yeah, they create their budget at the start of the year and have full accountability for it, which is absolutely brilliant. And then there's others who said, I've got a budget, but I don't control it, so it's challenging to plan type thing.
And that's got to be where your relationships come in, right? So I've always worked as a bit of a combination of the two. I had a marketing budget, a central marketing budget in inverted commas, and then there was an ops marketing budget, which I would work alongside each managing director to look at what should they be spending, what channels should they be using. And that's in their budget, but that worked alongside marketing. So they weren't spending on an event that we didn't know about or anything along those lines, but it sort of gives them an element of really tactical operational control that feels better to them.
Yeah. So they feel like they've got control.
Brand, I guess, and part of the brand search, internal recruitment.
Okay. That's what I was going to say. What other things kind of would have gone into that? Because I think that's a clever way of doing
it's a good combination, because it feels like both sides have got some control, but it will then come down to your relationship, so that people don't go off and go, well, I've got the budget, what do you mean? And I think it depends what you sit in there as well. Because if you sit in, we've had some of these debates over the years, but if you sit LinkedIn in there, for example, well, I've got budget and I've allocated budgets for 20 licenses, but as a business we have 60 licenses, and your pot is only 10. So, then they all have to return for us as a business before you can buy 20.
Yeah, it's true.
So that debate and that relationship is really important. And that's, I know we're going to come onto it, but that's why I think returns shouldn't be something that you just talk about in one board meeting a month or a quarter or whatever. It should be something that you're constantly communicating.
Yeah, and I think it does depend on the business setup as well. And I think if you're a marketer, in a business where if you've got multiple teams and they're not responsible for kind of their own profit and loss, is that they won't care naturally about marketing, because whatever you spend, it's not going to affect them, even if they've got a level of accountability from it. So I think that's a good conversation if you're a marketer to have upwards as well. It's like that we're having all of these ideas, but we can't get the accountability. A good way of being able to do it, especially if it's driving revenue, is to put a portion of that responsibility onto the team for their marketing spend. Is that what it worked like at Search?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think it saved a lot of those conversations, which early on are, well, I can't do that. It's not in my budget. Actually, do you know what? And that's an ongoing conversation. We did budget once a year. But that budget was movable, so there's an amount of money which you can play with. Yeah,
I think a bit. We mentioned it, so let's debate this question while we're on the phone, on the call. Billy said, should LinkedIn be part of a marketing budget, not just promoted spend, all of it? So I assume Billy, is going to mean recruiter licenses, like that as well. I'm in the no, it shouldn't camp.
And I'm in the yes, it should.
Oh, there you go. So I'm a bit like that with job boards as well. I think unless marketing has has some influence on it, I don't like it in the budget. Now the case is, should marketing have an influence on it? Should we be talking to our consultants about how to write emails, how to use LinkedIn and that training? Yeah, so I agree with that. But if you haven't got that responsibility and you're having arguments internally about it, saying, LinkedIn's in my cost and I can't have any influence in it, then put yourself forward to say, well, look, I need to be involved into how consultants are writing messages. I need to be training them. I need to be upskilling them. Same with job boards in that respect, isn't it? How to write job adverts.
And the relationship with the job boards, what training can they deliver and what help can they help with their algorithm and how they work and all of those things that ops don't put a value on.
Yeah. And it
changes.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I get why marketers are like, we don't use it. We can't control the recruiter licenses. Yeah.
But then so have that split budget, have your central part, have your ops owned part that you put job boards in, but that you still have a conversation about and you've got some control over it, because it can still be a real selling point that, do you know what, this is what we were able to push more out of Job Board X or LinkedIn because of the training that we delivered, because of the conversations around emails, because of the X, Y, and Z. So it's still then a value add back from marketing.
Yeah, and you at least give it a go. I took the approach where it was in the budget, and I was getting caned for it because I was targeted. I had a bonus based on it, and I didn't have the influence, so I had to change internal processes and structure to accept that I have it in the budget. But at least then you've got a starting point of when you felt like you didn't have any influence, and then you can implement your own stuff, and then have a quarterly report on what changes happened there, can't you? And then you're able to demonstrate, the return in that sense.
Yeah, and I went through a similar process with LinkedIn, and in the end, that's almost how it became part of the marketing budget, because I was able to prove through LinkedIn, because you can't, and it is a really manual process, but through going through a quarter's worth of sourced on LinkedIn on those CRM versus what you can actually see on LinkedIn is a placement. Yep. And yes, it was manual, and yes, it was like being a detective for a quarter. We were able to prove as a team that the return was very different if you listen to LinkedIn, which is the real story, versus what was going on to the CRM. Yeah. And so all of a sudden it just becomes a bit of a nonsense, and you're potentially renewing something for teams that aren't making money out of it.
Yeah. And you mentioned it there around tracking. How do you track things? And it's different for loads of stuff. I can't remember, apologies, who put it on LinkedIn yesterday in terms of tracking return on offline stuff, events and things like that, as well as the online stuff. It's very different. But what is your thought process when it comes to tracking whatever the return is?
Mine does go back to that budget, and you almost track line by line. And to be fair, in search, it isn't the best CRM loop up, so it is a manual process, and it is very manual, and all of those things. But it's also very worth it, because what you can prove out of it is just massive. So almost campaign by campaign, event by event. And if you need to, and for some of the events, it was like that on an Excel spreadsheet. This is what it's delivering. These are the people coming through, and this is what you can see at the end of it. Yeah. There are, with the digital side, it's a lot cleverer than that, obviously, and you can track it so much easier and so much more smoothly. But I think I know it's a frustration how manual it can be, but I think the value you get to add off the back of it is just more than worth the effort.
Well, I think probably where you're kind of you prove that in yourself in terms of the team that you built at Search. I assume
and having that £14, having that £14 marker as this is the only acceptable level. Anything below that goes from, we did a red, amber, green, but whatever you want to call it, goes from into a below acceptable level. Anything below £10 for us just was an underperformer.
Well, it just red flags. Can we change it? Give a period to change it.
Yeah, and you gain that ability to argue more business cases, because you've proven time and time again that £14 of return for £1 spent is a good amount. It's a quality amount to be spending, and most leaders would say, okay, outside given circumstances, I absolutely accept. But okay, do you know what? If you've proven it over that project, that campaign, that event, then you can have budget for this in your next budget meeting.
And for people as well, isn't it? For growth, because if you're being able to prove things like that manually through events, previously what might have been something that loads of people kind of got involved in, you can bring someone on board and pay them a salary to be an events organizer, and as long as you keep that minimum standard, I think that's beyond just the pounds and pence. I think from any marketers watching, that it gives you the clout to be able to grow yourself as a marketer and grow your team, isn't it? Regardless of what it is, because you had video specialists.
And I think the other important thing to note on the tracking is that sometimes you can't necessarily. Sometimes it's about proving leads and value. It's not always about the end. You're not placing the people, are you, at the end of the day?
No.
It's about leads and value. as well as placements, and that's about where your relationships come back to the consultants. Why aren't they delivering from the leads coming in? If they're not, are they the wrong type of leads? In which case, let's reassess and do it differently. Yeah. And that's where that measurement of granular level is really important, because then you can really start to understand where is it not working and why.
And I think it's the gap as well. I think, Adam Gordon joked about it, this being the sexiest thing and marketing being the heartbeat of it. But my approach when it's come to like return on investment and being able to track the leads and everything is to create an accepted value and then an actual value. So your accepted value is based upon, and you can break this down however much you want at a company level or a team level, based on average candidate value, average placement value, whatever it may be. And that's the marketing expected value. And you've pushed people down the funnel as much as you can. And then if the average lead time of registering a candidate or getting a job on is 3 to 6 months, you track it 3 to 6 months later, and whatever that gap is, that gap's a sales issue, and you can take that to the next level, saying we've given you these qualified leads. This is what we'd expect to get as a return. We haven't, and we feel that it's a sales issue, and I think that's quite a good approach to have those two metrics, rather than doing an activity, waiting 6 months, just where's the return? Because you're undervaluing the marketing influence in a sense, I think, as well. Just specifically on the offline events, what steps did you take with events and stuff that happened offline from a tracking point of view, just to maybe give people some insight? I know events are on the top of people's agendas at the moment, but webinars and things are. You can probably track stuff on webinars a fair amount.
That's where you can. And I think some of it's about re-engagement. So we always started with the database from an events perspective, and it does come back to what's your objective. Are you looking at doing an event as a thought leader? Are you looking to re-engage your database? Are you looking to source prospects from it? What are you trying to achieve? And I think then once you've got that objective nailed, and I think Richard mentioned it on Tuesday, it is about that brief in the first place. What are you trying to achieve here? Because just doing an event for an event's sake is you're not going to get your £14 to £1 spent back. Right. So what are you trying to achieve, and really understanding that, and then going from there to, right, okay, here's how we're going to measure it. So if it's a client lead generation from a prospect's perspective, it is about measuring who is it that you want, and we've done that before, certainly, like who are your 5 targets that will make a difference to your business this year if they attend this event. And then it's around tracking those 5, and then any above and beyond that come through that have not been on the database previously. But for me, the real source of value is in those 5 you've told me you want there, and we've achieved that through the marketing of it. And then there's the re-engagement piece, which is about how many have re-engaged, how many people have you, and I think that's important now, isn't it? Because right now it isn't going to be about
great opportunity though. It's a great opportunity.
It's a huge chance to re-engage your database, and who have you reconnected with, and coming back to the tracking, I think that attribution piece is really important now, because I'm sure Adam will talk about it at some point, but the points of contact that somebody goes through before they necessarily take that job through a recruiter or through any source, the multiple, everybody knows that now. So where are you tracking that value to? So again, that almost manual process of tracking helps you there, because your CRM's only ever going to record one source. Knowing that they came through Read initially, but they also checked out that consultant's LinkedIn, they've been on your website, and being able to track all of that, they've read a blog, it's so important, because it gives you value for each stage. And I think that's I have these conversations with clients, on a weekly basis, and that is still a big issue / challenge within recruitment companies, is that it got put on as job site in 2003, and it's been placed, and there hasn't been any change there, and why doesn't work. So I think that's brilliant, that
attribution piece. Billy's just mentioned there, it's probably something that you mentioned, Janine, is how did you calculate a cost per lead at search?
Cost per lead?
Yeah.
Depends on what it was, under what channel. So it would depend on what we spent on.
Yeah.
Email marketing was probably our best source of leads, genuinely.
Yeah.
Referrals was a really good one. And we referred, and so actually cost per lead wasn't that bad. And we did trial things like what's the tool called? It's going to go out of my head. Cognism.
Okay.
The sort of tools where you can dig into, right, I want, to know accountancy firms that are looking for investment, that sort of thing. But we didn't find it returned nearly as well as just basic, right, email marketing tools, and especially for a business like search. And I guess that's probably where my experience differs than if you've got a smaller recruitment business with a smaller database. Most of the data is there, it's just not clean.
Yeah,
so that's that re-engagement piece, and that's where email marketing comes into its own. It's just massive.
And what about the qualifications of leads? I know you used candidate ID at search, but was that kind of how you qualified them with that lead scoring?
Yeah, it's a game changer, massive game changer.
Yeah.
And without blowing smoke up Adam, because he's coming on, I know, but it just made a massive difference to us, and it returned. If there's
a small mercy of not being able to see the chat, Janine, I can't see Adam's comments at the moment. And he is. I see he is online. But
yeah, it is something like that, or your HubSpots or whatever it is. And you messaged me last night because you knew I'd opened the email because I was prepping for this. So anything like that where you can see what somebody's doing. I think that's where marketing return starts to come into its own, right? Because you can then judge warmer leads than others, and your consultants really get that intelligent level of data instead of just, gosh, here's my CRM. And back when I was first a recruiter, it was just like, let's stuff a load of envelopes and fire out a load and see what we get back. Yeah. Whereas you get that much more intelligent, right? This is the sort of thing they're reading. They're much more responsive to the WhatsApp group than they are to email or whatever it is. It just works so much better.
And that's that we're talking a lot about existing databases here, but that works exactly the same for any inbound work you're doing, isn't it? You still have to put candidates and or clients on those journeys to be able to get a real idea of where they come from and what is proving the return.
Yeah, and then where they go. So the more that you can invest, I think, in, and this is a journey, you have to be proving return before you can get, I think, budget to track your website in a really detailed way. But, tracking where the journey of candidates and clients through your website and what pages are being read and what pages aren't, that can add so much value to both to the overall return piece, but also to you as a team. Like, where are we spending our time and our investment as a team? That makes a massive difference. It certainly did to me.
Yeah, I think for we'll dig into that a hell of a lot more when Adam comes on in terms of like automation and lead scoring. He might even bring up some slides. I'm not sure yet, but there'll be loads of detail in that. So make sure you tune into that in a couple of weeks. Jordan's just mentioned, because we were talking about sourcing, is tracking candidate source and placement source important to tracking ROI? Now, I think from what we just said there, it depends. If that candidate source is on your database and it was a candidate that was put there 10 years ago and they've just been placed again, I'd probably say it's completely and utterly irrelevant, if I'm being honest. And
I think it's just good to know, to look at the data, I guess, to have the information. But we found in search really early on, one of the first jobs I did in search was look at the sources, and I think it was the whatever begins with A, the Aberdeen. That was the most they got their most candidates from at that time, because it was a manual process and consultants, they had to do it, but they had to select. Yeah. And so they just picked the top one.
Yeah. Or our database. That's always a good source.
Yeah. This was just lazier than that. Just pick A, whatever's at the top of the list. And that, we'd advertised in the Aberdeen Press for 50 years before I started.
Again, Jordan, I think unless you're able to track type things, the journeys and the touch points that candidates have been on, there's an element of it that splits back to the manual process as well. Is being able to when a placement's made is go and talk to the consultant and find out what conversations were happening there. And even from a marketing point of view, see what you've got in place as terms of in terms of a follow-up to placed candidates or any candidates in general, to get that sentiment analysis of, where did you hear from us? What caused you to get back in contact again? If you have to go that manual, that's fine, because that still gives you the insight.
Yeah, and you can get a bit more insight besides if if you're going down that route. Take the opportunity and get a bit more.
Exactly. If you can, you want to pick up the phone to placements and have that conversation from a marketing point of view. Do it, because you'll get a hell of a lot more insight. Coralie's asked as well, just to cover this off. I'm interested to see if you're on the same kind of thought process as me here, Janine. Coralie's asked about marketing budgets again, and what should they be as a percentage of turnover, rather than turnover. From my point of view, NFI, I've usually gone between kind of 3 to 5% of NFI. Now, again, this comes up with those questions that we've asked before. Does that include LinkedIn recruiters? Because I'd probably bump it up if it did.
At least 5,
yeah. And equally, does it include salaries? Does it include your costs? Now, different companies will say different things there, won't they?
Yeah. So we worked from a central perspective as that sort of 3 to 4%, but that didn't include your job boards and your LinkedIn. That would have sat in an ops marketing. Yeah. So overall, I had control of a bigger budget, but my central part would have controlled salaries, and that's the bit that I 100% owned, which would have been probably a peak between about 5%, 5.5%, and down as low as 3%.
Yeah, and I think that drives you to have salaries in there, and
I think
it drives you as a marketer to be successful, because you're accountable to it. And why shouldn't the costs of all your expertise be included?
Yeah, surely that helps your value. That for me, and that's why I said at the start of this, as a marketing director, for me, return is about your value that you add as a team, not just what you spend. It's about both of those things, because it has to be, because that's how you get ops from consultant up to MD to CEO understanding why marketing's important. Yeah,
and it's how you get a seat at the table, like Janine had, and I had when I worked in house. That leads quite nicely onto the reporting side of it. Reporting the figures, and I think people will know how to do that if they've got the process in place. You can report it at a board level, create a marketing kind of board pack that you give to your finance people. But you mentioned about the storytelling as well for those stuff that's a little bit more intangible. What's your kind of thinking for stuff like that?
There's obviously a number, right? I think we all understand that, and you can all quote a number, but I think the story comes from what are you quoting now? So right here and now, it'd be pointless to quote the number of placements made out of something, because there aren't that many placements happening. But what's important in your business now? Is it interviews? Is it candidates re-engaged? Is it that those niche candidates or those leads that you're generating from prospects? And that's the bit that gives you more of a story. It's not just a single number. And you wouldn't judge something a success just because it did or didn't deliver a number. There's always an anecdotal piece that sits behind it. And I think that's the important thing. And that's another reason why I think LinkedIn is really important to be part of your budgets, because it might not return this month or next month, but actually that newbie consultant might be hovering on the verge of a deal that you can just about, so if you were just to switch them off because do you know what, they've hit there at £9.90 and it's not working over that quarter, if it's not a story, if it's not a conversation, you'll have missed out.
No, I agree. And
there is definitely that grey for me, and that's the important bit. And I think that's why it doesn't work to only report marketing on a board pack or PowerPoint. We all do that, and that's important. It's an important part of what we do, don't get me wrong. It's an important part of having the seat at the table. But I think that story is around what can I tell them now? How can I, and even before when COVID appeared and it started to create all of this chaos, I knew I was leaving search, but very few people did. And I made a conscious decision to email once a week one of the MDs, one of the leaders, with here's what the team have done this week. Here's the candidates that have been generated, and for call center when that was huge and manic and busy because of all the 111 helplines. Here's the new clients that we've generated in healthcare because every candidate wants to work. Just those little snippets of did you know, almost drop it into conversation, and I think that is really important to add value.
And even if you think, and I know what some people, there'll be some people here, and they might be saying it on the chat, who knows? There'll be people saying here, no one ever reads my emails. They don't read that. But you know what? They will. That will be there. And even from your own perspective, it was something that I used to do as well. Beginning of the week, this is what we're doing. End of the week, this is what worked and stuff. It's really, really useful because you've got that as ammunition whenever you may need it yourself as well.
And back to the team. Did you know this is what, I had a reasonably sized team. So did you know this is what Pauline, the videographer, has achieved this week? Did you know this is what Mark, as our SEO expert, has done on the website this week and what it's generated? I think the team need to know it because they need to be sharing it in their conversations. It shouldn't just come from top level up. It should be an always going conversation. And
consistent and regular and consistently. Don't be just reporting on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis. It has to, daily at the virtual coffee, having a virtual coffee.
Also, it helps, doesn't it? Do you know what? Did you know what we generated for that team in Coventry? Or do you know what happened there? We could try that in Manchester, couldn't we? I think even that, like the sales consultants, salespeople are generically, they're competitive, aren't they? Yeah. So how can you tap into that? And that's about that return piece. But actually, you're also letting them know what marketing's delivering at the same time. Yeah.
What about those, the fluffier pieces of marketing that sometimes we talk about? The branding exercises. If you think like, we need to redo logos or we've just done a rebrand, or we might have spent new money on a website. Is that storytelling again? Is that us going doing some like market research and stuff and getting other stories back as well?
Yeah, so I had a creative team in search, and that was probably the hardest bit of the piece of the pie for me to
what did the creative team do? What just
everything, all your tactical, a business of 600 consultants at peak, they needed just a volume of email headers and footers and flyers, and so the team were just delivering all of that, as well as client pitches and your presentations and brand logo rebrands, etc., employer brand for clients. So from big stuff to small tactical delivery day in, day out. And that's quite hard to tell the story of what are they doing and why do we need an extra person, or why do we need to cover a person who's going off, etc. So for me, some of that's about volume and some of it's about usage. So we had a template system, at Search, where your consultants could go on and pick up their social media templates and personalize them and send them out, type thing. So volume of usage on there, new templates driven, so almost work performed and that side of things, and then combining that with the stats on the social media. So how have we added value within Facebook over a period of time? Now, it's not a direct correlation, but it still tells a story.
Yeah, but that, I suppose, that creative team and everything that they're doing, all that jazzing up that they're
they were my colouring in team. Yeah, absolutely.
It was part of other marketing, wasn't it? So it's just about bringing.
The campaign piece needs the salary. Your time and effort is important, and if and when we were selling anything to a client, which we did on occasion, that's the biggest piece, isn't it? Time spent.
And I think it's something that's very easy to forget, and you mentioned it at the very beginning, is if you're a marketer, is always remember that return on your own time investment as well. Because if you are a marketer and you're spending a lot of time colouring in, or inverted commas, when you can be doing another task that's going to be generating your 14 times more stuff to stuff that's generating nothing, is you need to tell that story and either get the resource or refocus it, isn't it? Because that otherwise you're just going to stay on that hamster wheel of just doing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
If people kind of either aren't reporting on ROI at the moment, or feel like they can't report on it, or they haven't got that, that channel upwards to start reporting on it, if people could go away now after watching this and go and do a couple of things, what could they be?
It's a good question. I'd find a positive, I think. What, if you're not tracking anything, if you're not reporting on anything at the moment, presumably you're still doing some tracking. If you're not tracking anything, what could you start tracking? A campaign, a LinkedIn post, something. But assuming that everybody is tracking something, find a positive story. And some of that's about knowing the priorities, I think. So what are the priorities? Who are you closest to in the business, and who could you work with now to figure out their priorities and report something back to them that's positive? It'll help you, it'll help them, and you can report it up the chain as well. And I think if you're not doing anything, start small. As I say, it probably isn't about number of placements at the moment, but what are you delivering? What are you doing? And what is that bringing back?
Yeah. And I think like from my side as well, is if you can, have that conversation. If you don't know it already, is go and speak to your finance team, or if you haven't got the stats available to hand, find out what your average placement fees and things might be for various departments, countries, whatever it might be. So in your head that when you do get qualified leads, you're able to build that picture up of what you expect it to return, and then be able to track that actual return further down the line. I think there's as much of upskilling yourself to understand some of those business mechanics there as well, I think, from an ROI point of view.
Absolutely. And now's an opportunity, isn't it? So, the people that are struggling, the consultants that might be struggling, the leaders in your business, how could you help? And then you can prove that story on an ongoing basis. And some of that might be as simple as, I know that there are too many of them, but they're sort of CEO message of how can I help, and getting something out to a small pot full of clients of how can we help you? Can we tell you our journey, what we're doing and how we're doing it? And can I have a conversation with you and see how that lands, and, and who reads that, who engages with it?
Yeah.
Start small.
And that might be a case is Janine's talking about individual teams and things like that. If you want to test out a process that's right for you, is choose a team, a small team, or a couple of people, and say, look, someone who's on board with you already, and say, look, I want to start doing more on return on investment. This is the process I want to take. It means that I'm going to sit down with you at the start of the month, at the end of the month. I'm going to send you a weekly update, whatever it might be, find out the activity, what we're doing, work together to track it, and then report back on it. Can I just use you as a guinea pig for it, and then report?
People say no.
Why would they?
Loads of different marketing techniques, aren't you? You get your free personal marketer for a month. There's ways of selling it. I think just get into it and try it. And I'm a massive advocate of that anyway, on any front. Just get started, try it, and the quicker something works or doesn't work, the faster you learn about it. Yeah,
and don't get lost in the technology and everything like that as well. I know,
as I say, if it needs to be like that, track line by line.
Yeah, and that's all it needs to start with. And if then it starts expanding out, and it is like anything we've been speaking about, taking up too much of your time to stop you returning on everything that you've shown, that's when you can start saying, look, we need to think about how we can automate this or track stuff like this better. But don't start with that first. Don't start with the cure. Not to use it, or not to use Donald Trump sayings at the moment. Sometimes that cure could be worse than the thing, because you're trying to fit everything in without getting the process of doing it yourself first.
Yeah.
No, I don't think any other questions have popped up. So we're dead on 45 minutes. I hope everyone's enjoyed talking amongst themselves during this 45. Yeah, this
blank.
Yeah, so apologies for that. Completely out of my hands. But thank you for all 60 plus of you registering. Whether you're watching live or on a replay, it's really appreciated. as mentioned, next week we've got Harriet Rhodes from Hazard, who is talking all about Google Analytics. I'm hoping she's going to do kind of a screen share and walk you through what you need to look at and what you don't. And then on next Thursday, we've got Chris Holland from Charlton Morris, who's really going to be talking about content. He's wrote tens of thousands of words. All of his consultants and everything subject
specific topics.
Yeah, it's brilliant. No jobs on his website. Everything's content led in terms of inbound. So 2 brilliant sessions next week. So thank you everyone for joining. Have a good bank holiday, those of you who are in the UK, and remember that it is actually a bank holiday this weekend. Enjoy the sun, and thank you, Janine, for joining me.
Thanks, Glenn.
Speak to you all soon.
Bye.